The alien marketplace was loud and crowded, filled with smells of strange foods and the sharp scent of burning metal. Ethan pushed through the crowd, keeping his eyes on the path ahead. He wasn't here to shop. He was here for ship parts one last job before he could leave this dangerous planet. But as he moved, something caught his attention. A tall alien girl walked a few steps ahead of him, her silver-blue skin shining faintly under the neon lights. Her stride was strange and even, almost like she was limping. Ethan frowned. In this city, weakness was dangerous. Predators, both human and alien, looked for it. And she had it written in every step. He kept glancing at her legs, trying to figure out what was wrong. That was his mistake. The girl suddenly stopped, turned, and faced him. Her eyes were bright and sharp, and her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Human, is that why you keep staring at my lower half?" The words were loud enough for people nearby to hear. The noise in the market seemed to pause for a heartbeat. Ethan felt a dozen eyes turn toward him, some curious, some hostile. A group of alien guards at the edge of the square took a step in his direction. This was bad. He raised his hand slowly, trying to calm the situation. "You've got it wrong," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I'm not staring for the reason you think." The alien girl crossed her arms, her expression hard. "Then explain before I call the guards," she said, her voice low but dangerous. Her people were known for being proud, and insults, even imagined ones, could start fights. Ethan stepped closer, ignoring the growing attention from the crowd. "It's your leg," he said, pointing not at her skin, but at the armor-like plates covering her lower body. "It's cracked, right there, near the joint." She looked down sharply, as if checking for herself. The armor was part of her body, grown, not worn. A faint line ran along the side, so small that most wouldn't notice, but Ethan had trained as an engineer. He knew damage when he saw it. "It's fine," she said quickly, turning away as if to leave. But at that moment, a drop of thick, glowing fluid slid from the crack and hit the ground. The stone beneath it hissed and began to smoke. The crowd murmured, stepping back. Ethan's voice was urgent now. "That's not fine," he said, "whatever that is. It's leaking, Nand. If it keeps leaking, you'll lose the whole lower half of your body." Her face changed, the sharp pride replaced by something colder, fear. She glanced around quickly. Then, "Back at him, follow me," she said, her voice low, and without waiting for his answer. She walked away, limping faster now. Ethan followed her into a narrow side alley where the market noise faded. The smell of damped metal and steam filled the air. She stopped behind a stack of crates, turning to face him. "Talk," she said, crossing her arms again. "Why do you care? You're a human trader. You could have just kept walking." Ethan shrugged, pulling a small repair kit from his belt. "Because I've seen injuries like that before," he said. "Once it spreads, it's too late to fix. Besides, I'm not the type to watch someone lose a limb if I can help." She eyed the tools warily. "You think you can fix this? My people's biology isn't like yours." "I can try," Ethan replied. He knelt, careful to keep his movements slow so she wouldn't mistake them for aggression. Up close, he could see the damage, better thin cracks running deeper than they looked. The glowing fluid was pulsing faintly, almost alive. She hesitated, then shifted her weight so he could work. The air was tense. "Your name?" he asked, trying to distract her from the sting of his tools. "Lyra," she said after a pause. "And yours?" "Ethan." For a few moments, there was only the quiet sound of tools clicking and the faint hiss of fluid being sealed. Then Ethan spoke again. "These scorch marks near the crack. They're not from an accident." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You see too much. Human. Someone attacked you," Ethan said softly. "Who?" She looked away, her jaw tight. "That's none of your concern." Ethan finished sealing the crack, applying a thin layer of hardening gel. "It is if they're still looking for you." he said. Because I think they are. At that moment, Lyra stiffened. From the shadows at the end of the alley, two figures stood watching, their eyes glowing faintly. They didn't move closer, but Ethan knew they'd been there long enough to hear every word. Lyra stepped back, her voice a whisper now. You shouldn't have followed me, human. But Ethan was already looking past her, at the watchers. He didn't know why, but he was sure of one thing. This wasn't just about a cracked piece of armor. Ethan didn't like the way the shadowy figures were standing at the mouth of the alley. They weren't moving closer, but their stillness was worse than an open attack. Predators sometimes waited, letting fear do their work. Lyra followed his gaze, her jaw tightening. They're from the Rift Clan, she muttered. They won't attack here, not yet. Why not? Ethan asked, his voice low. Too many witnesses in the market. She said, but once I leave this area, they'll come for me. Ethan glanced at the sealed crack in her armor. The temporary fix would hold for a while, but not forever. Then we finish. The repair before they get another chance, he said. Lyra stared at him for a moment, as if trying to read his intentions. Her kind didn't trust easily, especially not humans, but she finally gave a small nod. There's a workshop 2 streets away, hidden under a spice shop. They moved quickly. Keeping to side paths, Ethan kept checking over his shoulder. The Rift Clan's watchers didn't follow openly, but he had the uneasy feeling they were tracking. From the rooftops, when they reached the spice shop, the smell of dried herbs and sharp alien peppers hit him. The shopkeeper, a small, insect-like alien, gave Lyra a quick nod and led them to a trapdoor behind the counter. They descended into a dim workshop filled with strange tools, metal scraps, and glowing jars of liquid. This is where I fix my armor, Lyra said, walking to a workbench. But I can't reach some of the plates myself. Ethan set down his repair kit. Scanning the supplies, half the tools looked like torture devices to him. All right, he said. Let's finish this before your friends outside get bored and decide. To rush in, Lyra sat on the edge of the bench, folding her arms, but letting him work. Up close, the damage looked worse. The crack spread deeper into the joint, and small leaks glistened under the light. The glowing fluid pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. Careful, she warned. If too much leaks, the reaction could melt this entire room. Good to know, Ethan muttered. He pulled out a stabilizer gel from his kit. Using a thin applicator to press it into the crack, the gel hissed on contact, sealing the leak bit by bit while he worked. Lyra watched him with an unreadable expression. You fix things for a living? She asked. Used to, he said. Ships, weapons, sometimes mining equipment. I left that life. But the skills don't leave you. She tilted her head. Then why help me? You don't even know me. Ethan paused for a second. Because where I'm from, you don't walk past someone in trouble. You either help, or you become the kind of person who wouldn't. Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. In her world, help always came with a price. She was trying to figure out what his was. A sudden noise broke the silence, a faint scrape above them. Ethan froze. Listening, the shopkeeper upstairs shouted something in a panicked tone, followed by the crash of breaking jars. They're here, Lyra whispered. Ethan worked faster, his hands moving with precision. The crack was sealed now, but the joint still needed reinforcement. He grabbed a strip of hardened alloy from the bench and welded it over the weak point. Sparks flying in the dim light, the trapdoor above burst open. 2 Rift Clan warriors dropped into the workshop, their armor black and jagged, eyes glowing faint red. Ethan didn't stop. Almost done, hold still. He muttered to Lyra. She didn't move, her body tense, but her trust in him now unspoken. The first warrior stepped forward. Leave her, human, he growled, voice rough and metallic. She belongs to us. Ethan's welding torch flared brightly. Sorry, he said, without looking up. I don't take orders from people who stalk women in alleys. The second warrior moved toward him, but Lyra's arm shot out, blocking the path. You want me. Come through me, she hissed. Even injured, she had the stance of a fighter. The distraction gave Ethan enough time to finish the reinforcement. He clicked his tools off and stepped back. Done. He said to Lyra, try standing, see if it holds. Lyra stood slowly, testing her weight. The armor plates flexed, but held steady, no leak. No crack, for the first time since he met her. She smiled faintly. You fixed it, she said, almost surprised. The warriors didn't give them long to celebrate. One lunged forward, swinging a blade that shimmered with electric energy. Ethan grabbed the closest thing he could. Heavy wrench hand blocked the strike, the force rattling his arm. Lyra moved with sudden speed, using her repaired leg to kick the attacker back, sending him crashing into the wall. The other warrior hesitated, realizing she could fight again. This isn't over. He spat before retreating toward the trapdoor. The first followed, limping slightly. The shop fell quiet again, except for the sound of both of them breathing hard. Ethan glanced at Lyra. You weren't lying when you said they'd come for you. She looked at the sealed joint, then at him. And you weren't lying when you said, you don't walk away. Ethan began packing up his tools. They'll be back, he said, which means we need to move before they trap us here. Lyra's smile faded. Then you should know the truth before you decide to keep helping me, she said. Quietly, her voice carried a weight that made Ethan stop. What truth? He asked. She took a breath, her eyes locking on his. The reason they want me isn't because of who I am, because of what I'm carrying inside my lower half. Asterisk, the small workshop felt even smaller after Lyra's words. Ethan stood still. The weight of her statement hanging between them like smoke. He could still hear the faint echo of the Rift Clan warriors' boots retreating above. But he knew they weren't gone for good. What exactly are you carrying? He asked, keeping his voice calm. He had learned long ago that panic only made things worse. Lyra's gaze dropped for a moment, as if she wasn't sure she wanted to tell him. Finally, she spoke, her tone low and sharp. My people's lower body isn't just armor, it's a living storage chamber for me. It holds a weapon, one that can burn through almost any material in the galaxy. Ethan's mind flashed back to the glowing fluid that had hissed and melted stone in the market. That's what I saw leaking, he said slowly. You've been walking around with a chemical bomb attached to your body. Her eyes hardened. It's more than a bomb, human. It's an ancient bioweapon, one my clan was ordered to use against our rivals. I refused. Ethan frowned. Refused. You mean they wanted you to? What? Just unleash it on people. She nodded. They wanted me to destroy an entire settlement. But I've seen what it does. Doesn't just kill. It melts everything. Flesh and metal alike. Even my enemies. No one deserves that. Ethan's jaw tightened. So your clan marked you as a traitor? Yes, she said quietly, and the Rift Clan hunts me because they want the weapon for themselves. If they capture me alive, they can remove it. But that process will kill me for a moment. The only sound was the faint hum of the workshop lights. Ethan looked at her, really looked. Under the pride in her eyes, there was exhaustion, days, maybe weeks of running without rest. So you've been walking around, leaking death, with enemies on all sides, Ethan said. And you think I'm just going to walk away now? Her brow furrowed. You should. Helping me will put you in the crosshairs of every clan that wants this weapon. Ethan smirked faintly. I've been in worse situations. He lied. Besides, I don't like bullies, and those guys upstairs look like bullies. Before Lyra could respond, the shopkeeper hurried down the ladder, his small insect-like face pale. They are coming back with more, he hissed. You must go through the back tunnel. Ethan grabbed his repair kit. Lyra, let's move, he said. They followed the shopkeeper to a narrow, dim tunnel that smelled of rust and damp stone. It sloped downward, leading into the underlevels of the city. Ethan could feel the air getting cooler as they descended. Halfway down, Lyra stopped. "Ethan, if we get caught, I can't let them take me alive," she said firmly. "If it comes to that, you need to run." He turned to face her. "Not going to happen." He said simply, "We either both get out, or neither of us does." She stared at him for a long second, then, without a word, kept walking. The tunnel opened into a large underground chamber, lit by a few flickering lights. Old cargo crates lay scattered, some broken open to reveal rusted tools and empty canisters. It looked abandoned, but Ethan didn't trust it. He was right, from the far side of the chamber. Movement 3 figures stepped out of the shadows, Rift Clan warriors in full armor. They must have predicted the escape route. "You've run far enough, Lyra," the leader said, his voice deep and echoing under his helmet. "Come with us, and maybe we'll make your end quick." Lyra stepped forward, her stance ready for a fight. "You'll have to take me apart to get it," she said, "and you'll lose half your men before you do." The warriors spread out, flanking them. Ethan's hand tightened on the heavy wrench he'd taken from the workshop. The odds weren't good, but then again, I rarely were. The first warrior lunged at Lyra. His blade sparking in the dim light, she dodged, countering with a swift strike to his side, her repaired leg holding strong. The second came for Ethan. He ducked the first swing and slammed the wrench into the attacker's knee joint. The armor, denting with a metallic crunch, but the leader didn't move yet. He simply watched. Waiting for the right moment, Ethan realized too late what that moment was. The leader pulled out a containment device's small sphere that began to glow and hum. It was a weapon designed to neutralize bioorganic tech. If he activated it near Lyra, it could force the weapon in her body to rupture. Lyra saw it too. She shoved the warrior she was fighting away and charged at the leader. But he threw the device toward her, the glowing sphere rolling across the floor. Without thinking, Ethan dove forward, snatching the sphere just before it reached her feet. The device vibrated violently in his hands. Heat building fast. He had seconds to act. Spotting an old ventilation shaft in the wall, he hurled the sphere inside. A blinding flash lit the chamber as the device went off. The metal walls hissing and melting where it hit. The Rift warriors froze, realizing their plan had failed. "Next time, it won't," the leader growled, motioning for his men to retreat. They backed away into the shadows, their footsteps fading. Lyra exhaled slowly. "You just saved my life. And maybe this whole city," she said, her voice quieter now. Ethan adjusted the strap of his repair kit. "Then let's keep it that way," he said. "But you're going to have to tell me exactly how dangerous this thing inside you really is." She nodded, a grim expression on her face. "I will, but not here," she said, glancing at the melted wall. "We need to move because after tonight, the Rift Clan won't stop hunting us until one of us is dead." The melted metal of the ventilation shaft was still smoking when Ethan and Lyra slipped out of the underground chamber. They moved fast, their footsteps echoing in the narrow tunnel. The air smelled of rust, damp stone, and the faint burnt scent. Left behind by the containment device, Ethan knew the Rift Clan wouldn't waste time. If their ambush had failed, they'd be sending more men faster, heavier, and armed for a kill. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice low. "There's an old transit line under the city." Lyra replied, "If we can reach it, we can take a cargo shuttle out of this district before they lock it down." They kept moving, weaving through side corridors until the tunnel opened into a wider maintenance hall. The flickering lights cast long shadows, and every dark corner seemed to hide movement. Ethan's instincts were right. A sudden metallic clang echoed behind them. He glanced back. Shadows moved fast along the wall. "Figures closing in. They're already here," he muttered. Then keep running, Lyra said sharply, breaking into a sprint, her repaired leg held strong. Her stride smooth now. Ethan followed. Gripping his wrench as they darted through the maze of corridors, the maintenance hall led to a steep stairwell. They took the steps 2 at a time, their boots ringing against the metal. Halfway down, a voice barked from below another Rift clan. Squad. Blocking the exit, Lyra didn't hesitate. She turned sharply into a side passage, kicking open a half-rusted service door. Inside was a narrow walkway that ran above a wide drainage channel, the air heavy with the stink of stagnant water. They won't expect us to take this route, she said. They'll expect us to head for the streets. Ethan didn't care where they went, as long as it wasn't toward the men with blades and glowing eyes. They moved quickly along the walkway. The hum of the city above was faint here, just the drip of water and a hollow clang of their footsteps. But that sound changed. A faint splash echoed from ahead. They weren't alone. From the shadows ahead, 2 more Rift warriors stepped out, blocking the path. One held a long spear tipped with crackling energy. The other had a heavy net launcher slung over his shoulder. They're going to try and take you alive, Ethan warned. They'll regret it, Lyra growled. The first warrior lunged with the spear, forcing Ethan back toward the railing. The second aimed the net at Lyra, but she ducked and kicked hard, the net flying past her and tangling on a pipe. Ethan swung his wrench in a wide arc, slamming it into the spear shaft. Knocking the weapon from the warrior's hands, the man roared and came at him barehanded, but Ethan sidestepped, shoving him toward the railing. Lyra slammed her repaired leg into the second attacker's chest, the impact sending him sprawling into the wall. Move, she shouted, grabbing Ethan's arm and pulling him past them. They ran again. The walkway ended at another service door, this one leading into a dim storage area stacked with crates. Lyra shoved one of the crates aside, revealing a rusted hatch. In the floor, this goes straight down to the old transit tunnels, she said. Ethan didn't argue. They climbed down the narrow ladder into the darkness. The air was thick and dusty, the smell of old machinery heavy here. A long tunnel stretched ahead, its walls lined with dead lights. Rails ran along the center, disappearing into the shadows. This place is dead, Ethan muttered. Dead, but not empty, Lyra replied. The old cargo shuttles still run if you know how to start them. They moved quickly down the tracks until they reached a derelict shuttle sitting in a maintenance bay. Its hull was scarred and covered in dust, but the shape was still solid. Ethan set his repair kit on the console and began working fast. I can get it running, but it's going to be loud, he warned. Then do it before the Rift clan finds us, Lyra said, watching the tunnel entrance. Ethan worked quickly, bypassing dead circuits, rerouting power from the auxiliary cells. The console flickered to life, lights casting a pale glow across the bay. That's when he heard its footsteps, heavy and fast, coming down the tunnel. They're here, Lyra called, her hand already on the edge of the shuttle's door. Ethan slammed the last connection into place and hit the ignition. The shuttle's engines coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life, the vibration shaking the bay. The first Rift warrior appeared in the doorway, his weapon raised. Lyra stepped into his path, her kick knocking the weapon from his hands. Ethan reached out, grabbed her arm, and pulled her inside, slamming the door shut. Hold on, he shouted. He shoved the throttle forward. The shuttle lurched down the tracks. Picking up speed, through the side windows, they saw the Rift warriors running after them, weapons drawn, but the distance widened fast. For a moment, the only sounds were the rumble of the shuttle and their own breathing. Lyra leaned back against the wall, her chest rising and falling quickly. You just saved us again, she said quietly. Ethan gave a half smile. Don't thank me yet, if this thing breaks down before we reach the upper transit, we're dead. But deep down, he knew they had bought themselves a small piece of time. And in a chase like this, time was everything. Asterisk the shuttle rattled as it sped down the old transit tunnel. The lights on the walls flashed past like ghostly streaks. Ethan kept one hand on the throttle and the other on the controls. The engines? Deep hum filled the cramped cabin, but underneath it he could hear the faint echo of pursuit. "They're still following," Lyra said, standing near the side window. Her eyes tracked movement in the shadows behind them. Small lights like the eyes of hunting predators were closing in. Ethan glanced at the navigation panel. "We've got less than 5 minutes before the tunnel connects to the upper transit line," he said. "If they get ahead of us before that, we'll have no way out." Lyra didn't answer, but her posture was tense. She shifted her weight, her repaired leg flexing with the soft creak of armor. Ethan could see if she was preparing herself for a fight. They emerged from the maintenance section into a wider tunnel. The walls here were reinforced steel, and faint daylight seeped in through cracks in the roof. Ethan was about to breathe easier when Lyra's voice cut in sharply. "Stop the shuttle," she ordered. Ethan blinked at her. "Stop. Are you crazy? They're behind us." She pointed ahead through the flickering lights. Ethan saw it a blockade. Heavy cargo containers had been dropped across the tracks, and standing atop them were a dozen Rift Clan warriors, armed and waiting. Ethan's stomach tightened. "They knew where we were headed," he muttered. The leader of the group stepped forward, his armor marked with jagged silver stripes. His voice echoed through the tunnel, amplified by his helmet. "Lyra of the Shardborn, you cannot run forever. Give yourself up, and the human will be spared." Lyra didn't even flinch. "You've been trying to take me alive for weeks," she called back. "Why do you think I'm going to make it easy now?" The leader raised a hand, and the warriors spread out, positioning themselves on both sides of the tracks. Their weapons glinted in the weak light. Ethan knew if they tried to push the shuttle through, they'd be cut down in seconds. Lyra stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. "This is where we make our stand," she said. "You ready for that, human?" Ethan glanced at her and gave a grim smile. "I didn't fix your leg just to watch you get caught." They quickly came up with a plan. Ethan would reroute power from the shuttle's lights into the engine for a short burst of speed. Lyra would use that moment to leap onto the blockade, disrupt their formation, and clear a gap for the shuttle. "Try not to die," Ethan said, his hands flying over the controls. "Same to you," she replied, her voice steady but her eyes burning with determination. The shuttle crept forward, closing the distance to the blockade. The Rift Warriors tightened their grip on their weapons, ready to strike. Then Ethan slammed a button on the console. The lights inside the shuttle went dark, and the engine roared with sudden force. In that instant, Lyra sprang forward, kicking open the side door and launching herself into the air. She landed on top of the nearest container, her repaired leg slamming into the first warrior, sending him crashing to the ground. Another swung at her, but she twisted, using her other leg to hook his weapon and rip it from his hands. The sudden chaos broke their formation. Ethan pushed the throttle all the way forward, the shuttle surging toward the blockade. The warriors scrambled to react, but Lyra was a blur of motion, striking, kicking, and shoving enemies away from the center of the tracks. One warrior tried to jump onto the shuttle, but Ethan swung the heavy wrench out the window, catching him in the helmet and knocking him off. The shuttle closed in fast, the metal containers looming larger. At the last second, Lyra leapt from the blockade back toward the shuttle. Ethan caught her arm and pulled her inside as the shuttle slammed through the narrow gap she'd cleared. Metal screeched against metal, sparks showering the tunnel walls. Behind them, shouts and curses echoed. The Rift Warriors were left in the dust, the blockade broken. Ethan let out a long breath. "You're insane, you know that?" he said, glancing at her. Lyra smirked, leaning back against the wall. "You didn't seem to mind." But the moment of relief didn't last. Ethan noticed a faint red light blinking on the console. "That hit damaged the stabilizer," he said, his tone turning grim. "If it fails completely, the shuttle will shut down, and we'll be sitting ducks." Lyra's smirk faded. "Then we better fix it before they catch up again," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was no denying the weight. In her eyes, they had survived this fight. But the Rift Clan wasn't done with them, not even close. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "All right," he said. "Let's see how much further we can get before our luck runs out." The shuttle rattled harder with every passing second. The faint red light on the console had turned into a steady, urgent blink. Ethan knew what it meant: stabilizer failure. If it blew, the engine would shut down, and the shuttle would turn into a metal coffin sliding on dead rails. "How long do we have?" Lyra asked, gripping the wall to steady herself. Ethan scanned the readings. 2 minutes. "Maybe less," he said. "And that's if we're lucky." The tunnel ahead curved sharply, and for a moment, they couldn't see more than a few meters ahead. The only light came from the shuttle's flickering headlamps. The air inside was hot from the engine strain, beads of sweat running down Ethan's neck. "We need to get off this thing before it dies," Lyra said. "If it stops here, we'll be trapped in a tube with only one way out. That way will be full of Rift Clan soldiers." Ethan nodded grimly. "There's an emergency access station ahead. If I can reach it before the stabilizer gives out." The shuttle jolted. A metallic screech echoing through the cabin. The blinking light turned solid red. Ethan cursed under his breath. "We're out of time, hang on." He forced the throttle forward, the shuttle groaning in protest through the haze ahead. A faint sign came into view, a small service platform built into the tunnel wall. He slammed the brake lever. The shuttle screeched to a stop halfway alongside it. "Move!" Ethan shouted, grabbing his repair kit and leaping toward the side door. Lyra followed, her repaired leg clanging against the metal floor of the platform. The air here was stale, carrying the faint hum of power lines deep in the walls. Ethan quickly scanned the narrow corridor branching off from the platform. It sloped upward, probably leading to a surface exit. "We go up," he said. But before they could move, the sound of footsteps echoed down the tunnel behind them. Shadows stretched across the walls. The Rift Clan had caught up. "Go," Lyra said, moving ahead to clear the path. Her steps were fast, her posture ready for a fight. Ethan stayed close behind, his wrench gripped tight. The corridor was narrow, forcing them into single file. The walls here were close enough to brush against their shoulders. Their boots rang against the grated floor as they climbed. The sound of pursuit grew louder, armor plates clinking, weapons humming with energy. Ethan could almost feel their breath on the back of his neck. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a small maintenance chamber. Pipes lined the walls, dripping faintly with condensation. In the center was a vertical ladder leading to a heavy hatch. Above, "That's our way out," Ethan said, moving toward it. But before they could reach it, a figure dropped down from the shadows above, landing between them and the ladder. It was the Rift Clan leader, the one with silver stripes on his armor. His blade gleamed in the dim light, its edge buzzing with energy. "End of the line, Lyra," he said, his voice deep and cold. "You've run far enough." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. "If you want what's inside me, you'll have to kill me first," she said, her voice steady. The leader tilted his head slightly. "I was hoping you'd say that." He lunged at her, their blades and armor clashing with a sharp metallic crack. Lyra blocked, twisting her body to kick at his knee joint. The impact staggered him, but he recovered quickly, swinging his blade in a wide arc. Ethan didn't wait. He rushed forward from the side, swinging his wrench at the leader's weapon arm. The hit knocked the blade slightly off course, giving Lyra an opening. She struck hard, driving her elbow into the leader's chest plate, but the man was strong. He grabbed Lyra by the arm and slammed her into the wall. The sound of the impact echoed in the small chamber. Ethan felt anger burn in his chest. Without thinking, he swung the wrench again, this time aiming for the leader's helmet. The blow rang out like a gong, making the man stumble. Lyra pushed off the wall. Sweeping his legs from under him, the leader hit the grated floor hard. His weapon skidding out of reach, they didn't wait for him to recover. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her toward the ladder. She climbed first. Moving fast, despite her leg armor, Ethan followed, the sound of Rift Warriors shouting below. Growing louder, they burst through the hatch into blinding daylight. The surface was an abandoned industrial yard full of rusted machinery and weeds breaking through cracked concrete. Ethan slammed the hatch shut, locking it from above. They both stood there for a moment, breathing hard. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the yard in the distance. Ethan could see the faint glint of movement drift patrols sweeping the streets. They're not going to stop. Are they? He said. Lyra shook her head. No, not until they have me. Or until they're all dead. Ethan tightened his grip on the wrench. Then we make our stand somewhere they can't outnumber us. Lyra looked at him. And where would that be? He gave a faint smile. My ship, he said. If we can reach it, we've got a fighting chance. The industrial yard stretched out in all directions. Rusted cranes leaned like skeletons, and the air was thick with the smell of old oil. Somewhere beyond this maze of abandoned machines sat Ethan's ship, a battered but reliable freighter. Parked in a forgotten docking bay. We move fast and quiet, Ethan said, his voice low. If they see us before we get there, we'll never make it. Lyra nodded. Adjusting the plates on her leg, her repaired armor still held. But Ethan could see faint stress lines. She had pushed it hard in the fights. They moved through the yard, weaving between towering stacks of cargo containers, every creak of metal and rustle of weeds made Ethan tense. The Rift Clan would be hunting them by now. Spreading through the city like a net, halfway across the yard, Lyra stopped suddenly, holding up a hand. Ethan froze. Listening, at first, he heard nothing then. Faint, muffled voices carried through the air. They were close, maybe only a row of containers away. Ethan motioned for them to move around the sound, but before they could take more than 2 steps, a sharp metallic clank echoed behind them. The sound of boots on steel. They'd been spotted. Go. Ethan hissed. They broke into a run. The ground vibrating as heavy armored footsteps followed. The docking bay came into view, tucked between 2 massive storage buildings. Ethan's freighter sat at the far end, its hull scarred but engines ready. They were almost there when figures appeared on the rooftop above the ship. Rift Clan warriors, 6 of them leaping down to block the path. Among them, the leader with silver-striped armor stepped forward, his helmet glinting in the setting sun. This ends here, Lyra, he said. You've cost me men, weapons, and time. Now, you'll give me what I came for. Lyra stepped in front of Ethan, her stance firm. You'll have to cut me in half to get it, she said coldly. The leader's blade hummed to life. So be it. The warriors charged, and the air erupted into chaos. Ethan swung his wrench at the first attacker, the impact ringing through his arm. Lyra fought like a whirlwind, her kicks and strikes precise, each one driving back an enemy. But the Rift Clan had numbers on their side. 2 warriors flanked Lyra, forcing her to block from both sides. Ethan knocked one away from her, but the leader was already moving in, his blade aimed at her repaired leg. The strike connected, sparks flying as the armor cracked. Lyra staggered, dropping to one knee. The leader raised his weapon for the killing blue Othan. Didn't think. He threw himself between them, the blade slicing across his shoulder instead. Pain exploded through him, but he held his ground, swinging the wrench into the leader's chest with all his strength. The hit knocked the leader back a step. just enough for Lyra to rise and drive a hard kick into his side, sending him sprawling. The other warriors hesitated, their formation breaking. Now? Ethan shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm. They sprinted for the freighter's ramp. Ethan slapping the controls to raise it behind them. Inside, he stumbled into the cockpit, blood running down his arm. Lyra followed, slamming the door shut and locking. "The ship sit," she ordered, pushing him into the pilot's chair. "You're hurt. I've flown worse." He gritted out, powering up the engines. The freighter rumbled, the deck vibrating beneath them. Outside, the Rift Clan scrambled to stop them, weapons firing, but the freighter's shields flared to life. Ethan pulled the throttle. The ship, lifting off the ground, the yard fell away beneath them, the burning orange sky stretching wide. For a long moment, they said nothing. Only the hum of the engines and the fading sound of the city below filled the air. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. "You could have let him kill me. It would have ended your problem." Ethan glanced at her. "You're not a problem. You're someone who didn't deserve to be hunted like an animal." Her gaze softened, the usual guarded steel in her eyes dimming. "You've risked your life for me twice now. Human, why?" He thought for a moment. "Because I saw the way you stood your ground even when it would have been easier to give in, because you fought for what you believed, and maybe because I was tired of walking away from people who needed help." Lyra looked away, but her voice was quieter now. "You know I can't stay with you forever. The Rift Clan will keep hunting me. They won't stop." Ethan smirked faintly. "Then, we make sure we're always one step ahead." She met his eyes again. And for the first time since they met, she smiled without mockery. "You're strange. Human," she said softly, "and maybe." "I don't mind that." The freighter broke through the clouds, stars filling the black sky ahead. Ethan set the course, the hum of the ship steady under his hands. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, glancing at him with a mix of curiosity and something unspoken. After a moment, she leaned back and said, almost teasing, "So, are you still staring at my lower half?" Ethan grinned without looking at her, only to make sure it's still working. Lyra laughed quietly, the sound rare but genuine. Outside, the Rift Clan's world faded into the distance. Ahead, the stars waited, dangerous, uncertain, but free. And for now, that was enough.